evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of October 10th, 2017. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the flowers they always provide for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Here.
Mayor Rubing.
Here. Let me see. Steve Purpo, lead us in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have one announcement this evening. A candidate forum will be held at the San Bruno Senior Center here Wednesday, October 11th, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. It will be moderated by the League of Women Voters and televised live on San Bruno Cable TV Channel 1. We have some presentations this evening. This is always a lot of fun. Our first is a presentation of the Beautification Task Force's annual Beautification Awards. And following the award ceremony, the City Council will present a proclamation to the San Bruno Library, after which we will all recess for a little shaking everybody's hands and getting to know all the recipients. So, Irene, would you like to say something?
I have many things to say. I'm very excited. I'm Irene O'Connell. I'm the chair of the Beautification Task Force, and this is our 21st year of giving out these awards. And before I go down to the podium, I'd like to introduce some of my Beautification Task Force members who are here tonight. I see Val Morgan and Julia and Emil Hans, and I think that's all that could make it tonight. But I'd like to read you a list of the other people who make this possible. Sally Calvert, Jane Calvert, Sandy Headley, Bridget Lopez, Lee Miller, Carol Moriarty, and Melody Tobin. A long-term member, in fact, a founding member, recently passed away, Carolyn Livingood. Sorry, she was a founding member of the Beautification Task Force. In fact, it was through her encouragement that we started this Beautification Awards, and she just passed away last week. So I'm sure we'll be saying more about that. So with that, I'll start down below. So, I see a lot of people here. I'm hoping you're here for the Beautification Awards. And just so you know, we usually give a lawn sign to the first place winners of each of the 3 categories that we're recognizing today. Unfortunately for us, our sign maker has retired. So I haven't found a new one yet, but as soon as I do, I will make sure you get those signs. They're pretty spectacular. The signs are donated by Berkshire Hathaway, it's a real estate company that is owned by Larry Franzella, who was our former mayor. And also the prizes that you'll be receiving tonight were very generously donated by his company. So without further ado, let's start. So we are proud to present, and let's see. There we go. So it is the 21st, and the Beautification Award program is designed to recognize the efforts of residents, businesses, and public entities to improve the physical appearance of our community. The focus is on exteriors that require significant commitment on the part of the property owner or renter. And the properties you'll be seeing were nominated by either the person themselves, a neighbor or friend, one of the Beautification Task Force members, and the Beautification Task Force members then vote on who receives first, second, and third prize. So the first few are people who were nominated but unfortunately did not receive a prize, but they did receive a letter thanking them for their efforts. So the first category is xeriscaping, and the emphasis for this category is on landscaping using plants that need little, if any, additional irrigation, as well as the use of rocks and other objects. So we have 110 acacia, 309 acacia, 461 cypress, 200 amador, 280 Castleton Way, And that's not grass, that's all juniper. I know, huh? 180 Sherrill, 3371 Elston Drive, 122 Cypress Avenue, 3151 Falsman Drive, and our third place winner is 2095 Spyglass Drive. And you can see they are very dedicated people. They also have solar paneling, and they do a fabulous job. So are those people here? Michael? No? Okay. We'll take care of those. Second place winner is 114 Acacia Avenue. So are those people here? I don't have everyone's name, and I'm a horrible pronouncer. That's why I'm using the addresses. Okay. And the first place winners is 432 Poplar. So you can see this whole yard, every detail, and that's what they are. Are these people here? Yes. Oh, I had no idea. Come on up. Come on. Oh, here it is. So, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I had no idea it was yours. So there you go.
And it should be noted, they're all
Check.
mostly California natives.
Right here.
So we put
Would you like to
mostly
say-
California natives in, so that was our goal, and a dry creek bed.
How long did it take you to do that? Because I've noticed it for quite a while. Use the mic.
It's been a number of years now, a few years. It took about 4 or 5 months to actually put it in, and then it took a year for us to get them established. So we watered for about a year and a half, and then that was it. Turned it off.
Turned off the water, and that's what it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Oh, that's even more. The next category is single-family residence. This category acknowledges residents who make a significant effort to maintain the curb appeal of their homes. And again, these were nominated by anyone and everyone, and so if you know a neighbor next year, you're welcome to nominate them. So the first one is 161 Anne's Way, 253 Poplar, 431 Poplar, 364 Cypress, 333 Cypress, a lot on Cypress, 264 Cypress, 530 Elm. This is a small picture because there were so many political signs on there that I couldn't. Sorry guys, I had to kind of crop them out, but it's a very lovely house. 400 Elm, and the fall leaves are already falling there. 285 Elm, and third place is 175 Poplar. Oh, that's very cute. So, are those people here? No? I'm going to miss out on the cookies, too. Next is 937 Genevan. And are those people here? I'm going to take the checks and go home. Okay. Next is first place, I'm sorry, is 3610 Timmer Court. Oops. Are those people here? You're here. Yay. Congratulations. You worked very, very hard for this. And would you like to say something? You're welcome. Would you like to say anything?
Well, thank you so much for the San Bruno Council for giving us the prize. We dedicated our front yard for the neighbors because the neighborhood was really in bad shape because of the water conservation program. So we could not water the lawn all the time, but we still tried to bring water when we cleaned the dishes and all. Those water we used, recycled it to make sure that it is not getting, but still it was a hard earned effort to keep the lawn green, but we tried. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Next, we have a special recognition. Sometimes we get a lot of nominations in different areas, and sometimes we don't. We had one nomination in this particular kind of category. It's a multifamily place, and this is the one that Carolyn Livingood nominated. So I'm very happy to show this to you. It's 985 Huntington Avenue, and they, as you can see, keep up very lovely. And it's a very difficult place, as you all know. The wind comes down and brings all the trash down, and it's across the street from the 380 intersection there, and so they do a lovely job. So are the people here for that? Oh, good. Since we really can't give multifamilies a check, so we just gave you a certificate. And our heartfelt thanks. So would you like to say something?
One thing about doing the project, at first it was a depository for all sorts of litter. And the nicer it looked, the less litter was left there. And nowadays, it's rarely you'll see a piece of anything. And so it's nice to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the lesson we all have to keep in mind. The next category is improved properties, and these, as you can see, before and after. These are properties that obviously people have done a lot in just this particular year, August to August. So the first one is 2440 Princeton Drive. So that's the before, and that's what it looks like now. They didn't win. This one is 1450 Sequoia, and this is what it looks like now. And 1480 Sequoia, that's what it looked like before, and that's what it looks like now. And our third place is 552 Acacia Avenue. And are those people here? Oh, come on up. Come on up. So this is their before, and this is their after. And I know personally that they're also working on their backyard. So congratulations. Oh, I'm sorry. That's from lifting those stones, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we'd like to thank you for your hard at work. And would you like to say something?
Thank you for choosing my house. Yeah, before we had a grass whole yard, but a lot of use the water, so we cannot. So all that, and then after that, we try to use the less water, and then my husband and me doing. Try to do like this. We not call any company, so we do ourselves. And then after that, we so satisfied and so happy right now. Okay, it's okay. Thank you.
This is the fun part of my job. So that's a third. Our scoring was so tight on this. There's 2/3. So this is, the second third is 3498 Crestmore Drive. And are those people here? No? Okay. So that's now this is already xeriscaped, right? But look at what they did. And they added it looks like a real wheelchair ramp. So it's really wonderful. And second place, this is before 1391 Carlmont Drive. And before I go on with this was nominated by a neighbor, and I need to read this to you. It says the homeowner did all the work on the new garden themselves. They did not use professional landscapers, just like our acacia people. Before the improvement, the property had a lawn and an overgrown palm tree. The residents had the palm tree and the grass removed. Over a 2-part process, they painstakingly placed rocks and pebbles interwoven with drought-resistant succulents and pathway lights. The homeowner did a wonderful job that not only adds to their home, but improves the look of the neighborhood. So this is what they did. So are those people here? You have a very nice neighbor. Okay. Hopefully they're watching. And the first place winner is 2450 Princeton Drive. And this is what it used to look like. And this is what it looks like now. Oops, sorry, went too far. So are these people here? Oh, you are, yay! Thank you so much. I'm glad you could make it. Would you like to say something?
I would. I'd like to thank the council, and most of all, I'd like to thank the Beautification Committee for doing this for our city, because for so many years you've been doing it. It creates a lot of enthusiasm among the neighborhoods, and I think it just makes our town so beautiful. I love driving through and seeing the signs and so forth. So thank you for doing it. It's a great and beautiful, happy thing that we can do. We deal with so many other things, so thank you all, and thank you to whoever nominated us.
Well, we have one more thing before I close. The people at 2931 Woodridge Way won a recognition last year. And they were so enthusiastic about it, they nominated themselves again this year. Unfortunately, we have a policy that you can't win 2 years in a row. But she so desperately wanted her, I shouldn't say desperately wanted, she wanted her yard acknowledged and all the work she put into it. So I agreed that we should at least show the pictures. So this is what her yard looks like now. And she's kept it up and worked very hard. Oops, last one. So we're acknowledging her and her hard work. So, thank you. I'm so very happy that you could come. I'm sorry the people missed out, but they will receive their certificates and their checks. And just to be clear, the money did not come from general funds. It came from a donation from Larry Franzella's company. And so that's, just so you know, and the gracious acknowledgement of the City Council for allowing the Beautification Task Force to do this. So thank you all. Thank you for your hard work, and spread the joy next year.
Thank you. So before we break for just a little recess, I do want to present a proclamation honoring the San Bruno Library for the 2017 Summer Reading Program, and I'll read just some pretty extraordinary facts here. Whereas the educational achievement and success of San Bruno's children is the highest priority for the future of the San Bruno community, and whereas the single most effective way to support children in retaining school year learning and combat summer learning loss is to encourage students to read over the summer, and whereas San Bruno Library's summer reading program is a unique and cost-effective way to keep children reading over the summer months, and whereas the summer reading program and other San Bruno Library literacy programs prepare young children for school, help school-aged children and teens be successful students, and support adults in providing a good example by reading, and whereas the San Bruno Library's 2017 summer reading program successfully accomplished the following: 4,303 citizens attended a summer reading program or story time. 2,230 citizens signed up for summer reading, children and adults. 1,923 children received a free book. 636 citizens completed the Summer Reading Challenge, children and adults. 99 programs and story times for children and families were offered by San Bruno Library to the San Bruno community. And 30 teen volunteers assisted library staff to deliver this program. Now, therefore, I, Jim Ruane, the mayor of the city of San Bruno, on behalf of the entire city council, do hereby recognize the San Bruno Library staff and volunteers for their dedicated efforts to deliver the successful 2017 summer reading program, and the many children and families who participated in the program to encourage literacy and education. I'd like to present this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. My name is Tim Wallace. I am the Library Services Division Manager. We're honored to receive this proclamation from you tonight.
And Tim, who do you have with you?
These are folks from our library staff, our friends of the library as well, and I think a couple of our volunteers are here as well. So they deserve this certainly as much as I do, or even more. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the summer reading program. It serves two goals. The first is to stop the summer reading loss. Multiple studies have shown that children who do not read over the summer lose about 2 months of literacy skills, and when they return to the classroom in the fall, they're already behind. By engaging school-age children through summer reading, the library ensures that San Bruno children return to school every fall with their literacy skills intact. The second goal is to introduce the youngest San Bruno children to the wonders of reading. By working with preschool children and their caregivers, we're developing children who enter kindergarten eager to learn to read. Over the past several years, the library summer reading program has tripled in size, growing from 700 participants to 2,200 participants. There are several factors that have contributed to the growth of the program. First and foremost is solid financial backing from the City Council. I want to thank the City Council for providing generous funding not only for summer reading, but for all library programs. Second, an organization is needed whose sole purpose is to provide supplemental financial support. That group is the Friends of the San Bruno Library. We have at least a couple of them, maybe 3 of them right here. And I'm going to put in a little plug for them. They're going to have a book sale this Saturday, the 14th, from 10 to 3 in the library's downstairs community room. Bring a bag. Fill it up with books for just $7, and all proceeds benefit the library. Another reason the summer reading program has tripled over the past several years is the community partnerships we have formed. For many years, we have partnered with St. Robert's School and the San Bruno Park School District, which provide us an assembly at each of their elementary schools in the spring to promote the summer reading program. For the past 5 years, we have also partnered with our colleagues in the Recreation Division. We've provided library field trips, educational programming, story times, and promoted summer reading to recreation summer campers. And for the past 2 years, we've partnered with the San Bruno Junior Giants to sign up every junior giant for summer reading. In addition, it takes the entire library staff and 30 teen volunteers to work in a highly cooperative manner to make all facets of summer reading run smoothly. Finally, it takes one individual to champion the program to make it succeed and grow. For us, that person is Library Services Manager Barbara Bruxfort. It's Barbara's vision, passion, and determination that have powered this program to new heights. On a final note, I'd like to add that as San Bruno grows and changes, so too does the library. In just the last month, we have reopened our homework center to assist children grades K through 8 with their schoolwork. We've expanded our library open hours. We've begun lending laptops and Wi-Fi hotspots for home use. We've started a financial literacy workshop series, and we've received 2 3D printers through a grant, which we plan to incorporate into our programming very soon. I encourage all San Bruno residents to visit the library and see what we can offer you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. You all do wonderful work, and you're never funded enough, despite what you say. But we're working on that, and it's a lot of fun. I have the privilege of once in a great while to read to the little ones, and it's quite an experience. It's a lot of fun. So at this time, we're going to take a short little 10 or 15-minute break to have a reception with all of you. So join us out in the lobby. I'd like to call to order the City Council meeting again. We'll get to item number 5, which is a review of this agenda. Any changes? I think we're good. Approval of the minutes of the special and regular City Council meetings of September 26, 2017. Any errors, corrections, or omissions? Seeing none, to be approved as submitted. Item number 7 is our consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested. Anything on consent? Marty?
Pull 7C, please.
C, okay. Anything else?
Move to approve remainder of consent.
Second?
Motion second to approve the remainder of the consent on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 7C is adopt a resolution accepting the 324 Florida site remediation project as complete, authorizing the filing of notice of completion with the San Mateo County Recorder's Office, and authorizing release of the construction contract retention in the amount of $11,508. Marty?
So I'm pulling this for 2 reasons. One, I think it's another example of how we can get jobs done under budget. And I had a resident ask me about this project, and so I thought it'd be a good time to have a short summary and explain further how it happened and how soon we're going to be kicking off that new park.
Item number 7C on the agenda relates to the 324 Florida property. The City Council previously identified this property as a location for a new city park. And one of the first steps post acquisition of the property was to prepare the site for park improvements. That work included demolition of the several structures that previously existed on the property, removal of a very large solid mahogany wood carving fabricated by the previous owner, the individual who built the property back in the early part of the century, or rather the previous century, early 1900s. This project included environmental remediation of the site, as well as the demolition of the structures and preparation of the site, so that the next phase of activity will be actual park improvements. As the council member indicated, the environmental remediation was successfully completed with a lower than expected cost. Overall, the project came in $128,000 under budget, which is a wonderful result and a testament to the good project management by our Public Works team, led by Jimmy Tan, our Public Works Director. The City Council has already awarded a contract for construction of the park improvements, and we're looking forward both to a groundbreaking opportunity as well as to start of construction by this time next month. We hope to have the park in place for a ribbon cutting and a wonderful new amenity on the east side of our town within the several months of spring and of this year. I'm sorry, of 2018.
Action on C.
Move to approve item C.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, public hearings. We do have one public hearing this evening, and it's going to be waive the first reading and introduce ordinances enacting water and wastewater capacity charge updates.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, capacity charges are one-time connection fees paid up front as a condition for new development or expansion to existing development. Capacity charges are separate and distinct from the city's fixed monthly and quantity charges for water and wastewater service that users pay. Ongoing ratepayers do not pay the capacity charge that we're discussing today. Capacity charges are designed for the water and wastewater systems to recover costs of existing infrastructure and assets and to pay for new facilities directly benefiting new development. In the course of recent City Council review of water and wastewater rates, the City Council asked that there be an update to the city's capacity charges to ensure that new development pays its fair share of capital project costs. The City Council last updated the water and wastewater capacity charges in 2001. In your agenda packet, there is a Bartle Wells report dated September of this year, updating the city's capacity charges and making recommendations. The existing capacity charges, as the current ordinances read, charge for both water and wastewater using meter sizes. The City Council Subcommittee recommends a formula change related to residential capacity charges by using a charge per residential unit. Non-residential capacity charges would continue to use different meter sizes. And I'll stop in just a minute and allow the subcommittee to further describe their recommendation. In their report, Bartle Wells did provide a survey that shows proposed rates moving the city from the lowest capacity charges of all of our nearby comparator cities and agencies to moving the city to about the middle range, the mid-range of all of these agencies. That is not to say that there are not significant increases compared to where we are currently placed. As an example, a single-family home, the water capacity charge would increase by a little bit less, or by about 4 times, and the wastewater charge would increase by a little bit less than 2 times. The meter-based non-residential water capacity charge would again increase about 4 times, and the wastewater charge by a little bit less than 2 times. The subcommittee recommendation also recommends that the schedule be updated annually using a construction-based index that would not allow the lag to take place in the future for rate adjustments as it did between now and back to 2001. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And again, you well know Alex Handler from Bartle Wells is here to answer any questions also.
Good. Any questions for staff at this time before we open the public hearing?
And I'm sorry, Mayor, you have distributed updated ordinances, and I just point out the 2 elements in each of them that have been included that were not in the agenda packet. In both of them, there on the first page there is and it's highlighted. There is a greater definition, a better definition of the use of these funds that it is to recover costs. And the second element in the updated ordinance is the index language for the automatic annual adjustments to the charges. So those are the only changes from the material in your agenda packet.
Any questions for staff at this time or our consultant before we open the public hearing?
Through the chair, just for the public, it's section 1, item F is what's highlighted for us because that wouldn't be in the packet or online. And under adjustments are the two items that were highlighted that the finance director is referencing for information.
Okay. At this time, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody in the audience, public like to speak? Just come to the podium and tell us your name and street.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Christensen. I'm former employee of the college district and a current consultant on the housing project at Skyline College. I'm here tonight because we just learned about the ordinance that you're discussing this evening on Monday, and we immediately contacted the city to find out more about it. The existing ordinance was not in the packet and it wasn't online, so it was kind of hard for us to analyze what the differences were. We've had an active application under review by the city since April, and our application was deemed complete on August 10th. We've had weekly meetings with staff since we began this process in April, and we never heard anything about this ordinance. Also, all city departments reviewed our first submittal, gave us comments, and gave us subsequent comments on other submittals, and all during that time, every department weighed in, and we didn't hear anything about the ordinance. So having said that, our assumption is that this ordinance will not apply to our application at Skyline College because we were deemed complete August 10th, before this ordinance was introduced. And we'd appreciate some clarification of this before the ordinance is actually adopted in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I had the opportunity to have a brief conversation with Barbara Christensen and representatives of Southern Hill Homes just prior to the council meeting this evening, and I've advised them, as well as have had a short conversation with the city attorney, that we will look into the specific factors related to their project and provide a response very shortly, and certainly before your second reading and any action on this ordinance on the 24th of October.
Okay. Good. Anyone else from the public like to address the council on this? If I close the public hearing, you're going to be precluded from speaking on this to us. Any action?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any action by the council? Discussion? Marty?
So this is something that hasn't been done in 16 years. While residents have been paying increases, substantial increases, we haven't been charging the new customers this increase in capacity charges. It's fair, it's timely, and it's overdue. We have to find ways to reduce the burden on our residents, our current residents. And one way of doing that is to make sure, as this rate study confirmed, that it's a legal basis to do that. So I'm totally in favor of this. This is one of the things that I pushed for when we voted for the rate increase a little while ago. So I'm fully in favor, and I encourage the council for its support.
Okay. Anyone else? Ken?
Through the chair, the rate consultant is here, and although your explanation was very clear, I'd like to hear from the professional that provide the rate analysis, and give us, and not rate, not in consultant terms, but in terms that most of us can understand, and why this is timely and why this is necessary. Thank you.
Sure, I'll try to keep it brief too. These are the one-time charges that new connections have to pay. To be fair to everyone, including ratepayers, you want to make sure that new folks are paying their fair share of costs to connect to a system that's essentially been originally funded by ratepayers. There's a lot of pipelines, a lot of infrastructure out there, and more stuff to be built that's going to be benefit to the new development. So that was the whole purpose of this study coming out of the rate study. Hey, make sure we're also charging the new folks their equitable share. So we went through a fairly common approach to calculating these fees. Worked with the city. There was some, I recall, some utility committee public meetings that were held where there was some good participation from folks as well. And at the end of the day, the fees are increasing, particularly the water fees are very low, to a level that's kind of more in the middle range compared to most of your other regional agencies out there. The sewers in the lower middle range, it's also bumping up to the middle, all to make sure that everyone's funding their fair share, so the ratepayers aren't on the hook for costs that new development should be paying.
And if I could just, for a follow-up, is that the basis of the other municipalities, the other rates?
Good question. With these development impact fees, a lot of agencies establish them many years ago and just leave them on the books. They don't get looked at for many years. So I work with a lot of agencies who have fees that have not been changed in a long time. But in recent years, a lot of agencies have been turning their attention to these fees. So we've certainly worked with a lot of other regional agencies that are going through the very same effort that you're going through here. And the good thing is, the nice thing is if you do get these fees in place, that there is an automatic escalator to keep them aligned with the cost of construction cost inflation, so they don't fall behind over a long period of time.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? Irene?
Thank you. We did have a rather lively discussion about this, and it was a difficult decision for me. It seemed like an awful lot of money to add on to this. But it is a one-time fee, and it is paying into a system that all of you as ratepayers have been paying into and will be paying into for next 10 years at least, so that it gets rebuilt. Everything you do in construction is expensive. Everything you do underground is even more expensive. And anything that is connected with water and wastewater is even more expensive than that, as you all know. So we tried to find a way to have the people who are building something new add to our funding to keep the system going. So it is a lot of money if you look at it one way. If you look at it another way, it's a one-time cost for a one-time thing, and it helps the system. The caution about this is we don't have a lot of new development in San Bruno, and this is not going to generate millions and millions of dollars. This is just another piece to the puzzle, so just a cautionary tale.
Anyone else? Rico?
And just very quick, to Barbara, who had asked the question, so my understanding, again, the attorney will bring forward on the 24th a review of the Skyline project before the second reading, and that can be rediscussed to see about the August 10th, 2017 completion date and what that is from you. And then the other thing is, I think that this is back, and I think that was a unanimous decision, I think, to bring it back tonight, so that's what my expectation was. And so it is just a piece, Irene, I think you're very correct. Don't want to get people the wrong expectation that this solves all the woes. It does not. But it does bring something that has not been looked at or increased in 16 years, and it needs to be brought up to equity with the rest of the community.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to introduce and waive the first hearing.
Make a motion.
Reading, I'm sorry.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to waive the first reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Would you like to introduce the ordinance?
I'd like to introduce the ordinance.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Our next item is public comment on items not on this agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where
Excuse me,
appropriate.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. There are two ordinances. We need you to take action separately on them.
You're right.
One on water, we'll
You're right.
just assume that that vote was just now about water,
Water.
if that meets the council's pleasure, and if you could take a similar vote on wastewater.
Introduce the resolution.
Motion to waive the first
I'm
reading.
sorry, again? All the way back. All right, sorry. Motion to waive the first reading.
Second.
Motion is second to waive the first reading regarding wastewater.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina,
Wait a minute.
oops,
Take two.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Now, Marty?
So now I get to introduce the ordinance for the
Wastewater.
wastewater capacity charge.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra,
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And now we will have number 9, public comment on items not in this agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and/or action where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. And I do have some speaker cards here, and see, 3 of them are regarding items not on this agenda. So yeah, we can get speaker cards at the city clerk. Because we do have a crowd tonight, and I have speaker cards for another item in this agenda. So if you wish to speak to the council tonight on anything under conduct of business, I would request that you fill out a speaker card so we can introduce you in order. So the first person is Ryan Mersney regarding mail delivery. Ryan? Ryan?
I spoke at Ryan Mersney, Keynes Avenue. I spoke at a recent city council meeting asking if all of the several letters I addressed and sent to individual committee members were actually delivered by the city management. I then sent the question via email. Before I received a response from city management, I was sent a disparaging email from Maria Musio. I'm sorry, I beg my pardon. I mean, council member Irene O'Connell. The words in the email turned out to be untrue by the later admission of the city management. I reluctantly accepted the explanation of the city management of why all of my mail was not delivered. Seeing something very similar has now happened again to another resident, I question the explanation and/or excuse I received. I too question the commitment of the city management to allow a free flow of information and communication. I don't have a problem with the city management seeing what was in the letters. The letters were simple requests that certain subjects be looked into and possibly be put on the agenda of various committees. In fact, I sent 2 extra copies of each of the letters for staff that I assumed would be read by Carrie Burns, Jimmy Tan, Michael Cato, etc. I asked from now on that all mail and that all forms of communication addressed to whomever in City Hall be delivered to the addressee. I don't understand the need to manipulate, deceive, or act in a totally unethical way. I'm simply asking it to stop immediately. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stephen Seymour regarding elections.
Thank you, Mayor. To the council, I would just like to remind everybody that our elections are coming up very soon, and that it's important that we think about improper and open communications within the city government. I also think that it's important that we look forward to the development that's on the horizon as a city and make sure that it's development that improves San Bruno and doesn't impede on the neighborhoods near. I also think that we should all think about whether or not it's time to look to new city management. What we've been doing in the past hasn't really worked. And I think that we could see improvement not only from new council members, but also from city management, both in Connie's position and maybe in others. I'd like for everybody to take a look at sanbrunonow.com and look at the YouTube channel that shows the recent forum, the candidate forum, because we need to be educated when we make our decision in November who will lead the city. And there were 80 people that showed up at the San Bruno Now and Friends of San Bruno Framework Network. Callista and I put on a week ago. There have been over 700 people that have watched the YouTube channel and the Facebook video since. And I think it's a really good way to educate you on who you should vote for and who can lead the city forward. And so that's why I'm here tonight. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Andrew Boone.
Good evening, council members. My name is Andrew Boone. I live in East Palo Alto, and I came to speak on the Skyline item, but since I'm here, I wanted to bring up a couple other topics that I know this city has not taken action on and should, and those are on raising the minimum wage and on rent control. Regarding raising the minimum wage, $10 or $10.50 is an obscenely low wage, a poverty wage that no one should be earning who's working in this area. Even $20 an hour is barely enough to get by here, and you're all still allowing people to be paid $10.50. It's shameful. It's shameful that anyone's paid so little for doing honest work, and I think that you should follow the example of San Mateo, having raised minimum wage to $15 by 2019. That's a simple ordinance. You can just copy their ordinance and approve it, and you will be on the same path towards raising the minimum wage to what is almost a decent level for paying one's expenses here in San Mateo County. Last week, Redwood City had discussed this issue, and it looks like, based on the council member comments, they were very enthusiastic about following City of San Mateo's example and raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour by January 1st, 2019. I believe this city should agendize this item, discuss it, and do the same. Rent control is another issue where you can protect long-term renters from being displaced and really reduce a huge amount of human suffering by not forcing people out of their homes. I live in East Palo Alto. I personally benefit from rent control. If I didn't have it, I would be paying hundreds of dollars more every month. There are seniors living in the building who've been there 20 years. There's absolutely no way they can afford the astronomical rents that landlords are charging now. Rent control is not a radical idea. It's been adopted in cities. As time goes on, it's being adopted in more cities. Mountain View is one that adopted in 2016. And whose residents will now be protected. I believe the city of San Bruno should consider it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under public comment? Anyone else under public comment?
Good evening. I'm Jim Evangelist, 105 DeSoto Way. On September 17th, 2017.
Jim, could you pull that mic down a little bit? Thank you.
Thanks. After getting instructions from the city clerk's office about how to get a letter to elected officials, I mailed a letter to the mayor, city council members, and city clerk describing an incident involving city employees I thought they should know about. After waiting 2 weeks and hearing no response to my letter from anyone, I asked Marty Medina if he had received the letter. Marty told me it had not appeared in his mailbox at City Hall. He then told me he had to ask the city manager's office to provide the letter to him. They did. Still, as far as I know, nobody else on the addressed envelope has received their copy. For some reason, the city manager decided not to forward my mail to the city council members to whom it was addressed. I certainly hope that you are not comfortable with this kind of censorship of residents trying to communicate with their elected officials. This letter was not addressed to the city manager. It's open to question how often the city manager's office has stopped mail addressed to elected officials without their consent or knowledge. Non-elected civil servants should not be able to intimidate or block communication between the city's residents and their elected officials. City Council, if you permit this form of censorship to continue, then it will be the legacy of your time in office. Thank you.
Anyone else under public comment? Okay, you have something to say? Something not on this agenda.
Oh, is the Skyline Extension on the agenda?
Yeah, it's coming up, okay. So, all right, let's get right into conduct of business, item number 10. First, to receive a report and provide direction for the widening of State Route 35 from Interstate 280 to Sneath Lane.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, Jimmy Tan, Public Works Director, City Engineer, and Michael Cotto here, Associate Civil Engineer. The study in front of you tonight, it was presented to the Council last December, and we're doing it again tonight to provide an update on the results of the recent discussions with various committees. The Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee, the Traffic Safety and Parking Committee, and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committees. In addition, staff is seeking Council's direction on whether to proceed with this project or with this actually study. So brief background on the study. Back in 2012, the cities of San Bruno and South San Francisco jointly submitted grant applications for the State Route 35, otherwise known as Skyline Boulevard, to the San Mateo Transportation Authority for consideration. Through a competitive selection process, the cities received an $850,000 grant to complete the preliminary planning study through the environmental phase. In May of 2015, the Transportation Authority selected a consulting firm to help assist in preparation of the preliminary planning study. And the study was completed in June of 2016. And currently, the TA is requesting the city to confirm our commitment before they proceed with the next phase of work. The issue regarding Skyline Boulevard has mainly to do with traffic congestions during peak hours for San Bruno residents and regional commuters. Skyline Boulevard is a 4-lane arterial between intersections of Sharp Park and Skyline Boulevard and Sneath Lane and Skyline Boulevard. However, Skyline Boulevard is reduced to 2 lanes, 1 lane in each direction from the intersection of Sneath Lane to Interstate 280. And this reduction in travel lanes creates a traffic congestion. The improvements to the corridor has been evaluated in the past by Caltrans. In 1986, Caltrans conducted a study to determine the projected travel demands over a 20 years planning period from 1985 to 2005. The report concluded with the recommendation to widen Skyline Boulevard from 2 to 4 lanes since the roadway segment will be operating at a level of service D. The level of service is designated by letters A through F, where A represents the best operating conditions and F the worst. The recently completed preliminary planning study in June of last year recommended to widen Skyline Boulevard from 2 to 4 lanes, which is consistent with the results of the Caltrans previous study in 1986. The traffic evaluation indicates that the traffic congestion along the corridor will not get better if no improvements are completed. The 2 recognized points of congestions are the 2 intersections within the segment at Sneath Lane and San Bruno Avenue. The study predicts that in year 2030, the intersections will likely be operating at poor level of service, or E or F, during peak hours. The traffic analysis also indicates that the existing traffic volumes results in long southbound delays, which is heading towards I-280 during AM peak hours, and northbound delays coming back into the city during the PM peak from commuter traffic. The peak occurs between 7 and 9 a.m. in the mornings, and in the afternoon it occurs between 4 to 6 p.m. The preliminary planning study recommended several conceptual alternatives for consideration, and I'm going to show you some of the alternatives here. Alternative 0, it's no project, don't do anything, just leave the Skyline Boulevard as is. Alternative number 1 is adding additional lane in the northbound direction using retaining walls or cut slopes. Go ahead, Michael. Alternative number 2 is an additional lane in the northbound and southbound directions using retaining wall or cut slopes. Alternative number 3 was to widen the to 4 lanes at just the approach and departure at the San Bruno Avenue, and with some signal phasing improvements at Sneath Lane. And alternative 4 is the same as alternative 2, but with some signal phasings at Sneath Lane. So it's 1 lane, additional 1 lane in each direction, northbound and southbound. And then alternative 5 was to widen to 4 lanes between San Bruno Avenue and Sneath Lane with some signal phasings at Sneath Lane. So since last year's City Council meeting, staff presented the study results to the Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee and the TSPC and the BPAC to obtain their feedback. And residents expressed strong support and opposition to the studies, recommendations at all of the public meetings. And at the Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee, they heard comments from 2 residents that opposed to widening the road and concluded that the further work should not proceed. However, the sentiment was different at the TSPC and BPAC meetings. Many residents, approximately 18, attended the TSPC meeting held on September 6th last month. And many of those attending who live in the Portola Highlands neighborhood were in favor of the project and spoke about the need to alleviate the congestion that occurs during the peak commute periods. They were not only concerned about the congestion, but additional congestions in the future as well. Not the current congestion, but additional congestion in the future. So residents who opposed spoke about the high estimated construction costs for the project's improvements and expressed concerns that the improvements would only benefit only a small number of people who commute. And there are also unknown environmental issues and lack of bicycle and pedestrian improvements within the area. They also believe that adding roadway capacity encourages more people to drive, resulting in little improvements to traffic congestion. TSPC members expressed their support to continue to pursue the study by a vote of 4-0, with 1 member absent, who is Jessica Barn Lopez, with the condition that the bicycle improvements are or will be included in the project scope. They also recognize that the next phase is funded through environmental assessment, and additional work and evaluation will provide more information to determine potential impacts. The topic was also brought to the BPAC on September 13th, where the committee members voiced their same concerns, and both in favor and opposition, similar to the TSPC meeting. The BPAC also discussed, mentioned as a sponsor, the city has a strong voice in shaping the future of Skyline Boulevard that could be weakened or lost if it's stopped. The BPAC member expressed their support to continue the study by a vote of 3-2, with 1 abstaining, and recommended their support and requested staff to ensure this project scope includes a separated bicycle path. And staff is also in favor of proceeding with the next phase of work, so we'll have a better understanding of the environmental impacts. The grant awarded to the city already has available funding, therefore the city doesn't need to allocate any of the city's funds. Traffic congestions within the corridor is not expected to be improved over time as population continues to grow year after year. And the next phase of work is an opportunity for the city to learn whether the conceptual plan for the widening of Skyline Boulevard is even achievable. The environmental study would provide more information whether there's any induced demand impacts due to change in traffic patterns and impacts related to removal of trees and wildlife. However, we won't know the extent of these impacts until the next phase of the study is completed and whether the impacts can be mitigated. And based on the City Council's direction tonight, staff will contact the Transportation Authority to let them know of the results of tonight's action. If the next phase is approved, staff and the Transportation Authority will work together to develop a request for proposal for professional engineering firms to assist in developing the project initiation document and environmental study. The PID and environmental study are anticipated to be completed by the end of 2018. So this concludes our presentation, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Jimmy at this time, or staff?
Through the chair. I just asked the mayor if possibly I have a conflict since I sit on the TA on this issue.
No, there would not be any financial conflict of interest.
Okay. I do have a question for staff. Jimmy, and I meant to ask you this, at the subcommittee level. Any idea why the authors of this project did not include a pedestrian and bicycle component to this project?
Yeah, so the bicycle component was missed as part of the project, but we had confirmation from the TA that it will be included as part of the next phase of study. And the study that the Caltrans did back in 1986, with the document I have here, actually included the separated bike path lane as well. So, but as I mentioned, it will be included as next study in the PID documents and environmental study.
Okay, and related to that, in the staff report, it says that the study in 1986 stated that it predicted in 2005 that the rating of service would be a rated D. And then they did the study again in 2016, and they said by 2030, the rating would be E or F.
Correct.
And then at the end of that explanation, it said the results of the traffic analysis show that the alternatives would improve traffic operations during both peak periods. Did they give an indication on what it would be improved to? Would it be improved back to D?
No, it will be, there's here. You can show the slide, but so these are the improvements that are, it's a summary depending on the various alternatives. So it will be improved to B in the San Bruno Avenue, and from E to a D. Depends on which alternative is selected. So it could be B or D.
Okay, so for the benefit of the public, in the alternative 4, which would be 4 lanes and signal phasing, in the AM and the PM would possibly be improved to a B or a C. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry I missed that. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, we do have a few speaker cards here. Public would like to ask some questions. Jean Libor, Del Norte. Jean?
Yes, hello, council members. I'm a San Bruno resident since 2009, and I live in Del Norte Avenue.
Okay, speak right into that microphone.
Yeah, and I have a number of concerns on the highway widening project. First, well, there's obvious impact on the environment, right? We'll have to cut down those beautiful eucalyptus trees, and also the noise level is going to go up for residents, right, along the freeway, and not necessarily to residents that are directly facing the freeway today, but probably pretty significant area around it, because today there's a hill and a row of pretty dense trees that blocking the noise. Also, I think I also question the reasoning for the project, because although there is obviously some delays during peak hours, however, I don't think it's critical. It's maybe 10 minutes delays, and I don't think it's going to benefit some Bruno residents. There are other exits. It's going to benefit, for the most part, residents of Pacifica, who pretty much passing San Bruno. And another point I wanted to make is that eventually, I think you said that the population is growing. I don't think it's necessarily true for this area. And also with the culture of ride sharing and remote work, I think we're actually going to see a decrease in traffic. I think that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Anatoly Kish, hope I said that right.
Hello, my name is Anatoly Kush. I'm a resident of San Bruno Skyline Boulevard, and so we moved to San Bruno about 4 years ago with intent to start a new family, and now we have two young kids. And our whole reason from escaping from San Francisco was to escape from pollution and craziness of San Francisco to somewhere quiet where we can call home and raise our family. So unfortunately, with a project like this, it's going to be critical for us. And if something like this happens, it will
force us to move out from our house because we will have freeway in our porch. The noise level will increase dramatically, the pollution will increase dramatically. The eucalyptus trees that growing right now, they are really good for your health, and when we were choosing the house, that was one of the reasons that we bought it. And because we know it's really good for your health, for everybody who has respiratory diseases and problem with breathing. We think that over time, money spent for this project, San Bruno can benefit to a lot of different other projects, including but not limited to fixing roads, making playground for the kids, giving to education, giving to schools. And once again, me and my family are totally opposite this project, and we hope you'll make the right decision.
Thank you. Elena Kush, would you like to speak also?
Hello, dear council members. I just want to add to what my husband just said. So we have 2 young kids, and we're here to raise them and enjoy beautiful city of San Bruno. But unfortunately, with this project coming, San Bruno, yeah, with this project coming,
I'll give him 3 minutes if
I think it will be pretty much a deal breaker for us, unfortunately, because my kid's bedroom is facing the freeway, and right now we see those beautiful trees out there, and I would hate to see like a concrete wall or something like that, sort of structure. Also, there is very strong winds coming from the Pacific Ocean, and those trees, they are shielding us. I'm sure if you pass by at the evening in that area, Skyline Boulevard, you will sense, the weather coming from the ocean, and I think, having that road widened, and if something will impact those trees, that would be unfortunately a deal breaker for us to move out of the area.
Thank you. Tim O'Brien.
Good evening. Tim O'Brien, Florida Avenue. After looking at the proposed project, I'm against it. I think the money that will be spent on this project that San Bruno has to contribute can be used in other ways, like the gentleman said before, for our parks, our streets, our neighborhoods. I think it'd be more useful than widening a road. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey Tong.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Everyone in San Bruno recognizes that traffic congestion is already intolerable and getting worse. People are screaming that this can't go on. What are they going to do about it? Caltrans' solution at the time was expand the highway, but that was about 30 years ago. By Caltrans' own admission in their 2015 report presented that I'm going to present to you. Increasing the highway capacity is unlikely to relieve traffic congestion. In fact, it induces additional vehicle miles traveled in both short and long term, and it increases greenhouse gases. So the question is, how do we relieve existing traffic congestion without inducing traffic from outside San Bruno into San Bruno? Caltrans District 4 recently announced an unprecedented new bike plan which allows local government to take the lead. The subcommittee recommends a rejection of Caltrans' obsolete auto lane expansion proposal and recommends a cycle track, also known as an alternative vehicle transit lane, which is generally limited to about 15 to 20 miles per hour, in lieu of the auto lane expansion proposal. Our current infrastructure is automobile-based, and that infrastructure, both parking and transit, is already beyond full capacity. The automobile expansion plan requires a buy-in of at least 10%. At $35 million, that's about $3.5 million for the city, not including inflation. So please do not fuel the problem, but invest in the solution. The solution is to build new infrastructure which complements mass transit. Alternative vehicles like electric bikes, electric unicycles, bike share, scooter shares, they're already here in San Bruno. We need to build the parking and transit infrastructure for them anyway. I therefore support the subcommittee's recommendation and pray that the full council follows suit. Your decision tonight will affect residents for generations to come. Before Mayor Wayne and council members Ibarra step down, I wish to say thank you for a quarter century of service. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Boone.
Good evening, council members. My name is Andrew Boone. I live in East Palo Alto, and I served previously on the City-County Association of Governments of San Mateo County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I believe after you did, Councilmember Ibarra. And I've been following highway projects in the county since I moved here in 2010, and am generally dismayed to see tens of millions of dollars go into projects that the end result of is just more car traffic. Caltrans' own studies show that widening roadways and highways does not actually reduce traffic congestion. It just makes traffic congestion bigger due to the phenomenon of induced demand. People see, oh, the roadway is wider, there's more lanes on it, I can get to my destination a little bit quicker. So more people decide to take that route, and it ends up clogging up and ending up the way it was before. Look at all of our roadways in San Mateo County or the Bay Area. Are the ones with more lanes the ones with less traffic congestion? No. The more lanes there are, the worse the traffic congestion is. So what you're considering is to spend tens of millions of taxpayer dollars on something that's guaranteed to fail, meaning you're just going to have a bigger traffic jam. Other negative impacts include higher levels of air pollution, including greenhouse gas emissions. The city has a responsibility to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, not increase greenhouse gas emissions. This project, adding lanes to Skyline Boulevard will definitely increase greenhouse gas emissions. You also have a commitment to making streets safer. Adding lanes to a street does not make it safer for anybody, for people driving, for people walking, or for people riding bicycles. A 4-lane street compared to a 2-lane street means more cars moving at a higher speed, and that's a higher risk, especially for people walking and bicycling. And I was very discouraged to see that the preliminary planning study did not include any consideration at all for people walking and bicycling. Now the TA promises, oh, we'll do it right, give us the money, let us go ahead, we won't ignore you. I doubt it. This is a highway expansion project, the result of which is fewer trees, more traffic, more noise, more pollution. I don't see what the benefit is, especially considering that it won't reduce traffic congestion. Give me a single case anywhere in the Bay Area where adding lanes to a road has reduced traffic congestion. Thank you.
Will Klassen. Will Klassen.
Thank you, council members. Admittedly, I have not been invited to any prior meetings, nor have I known much about this project. As a resident who lives across from Skyline Bruno, I've now been getting involved, but had I known, I would have been someone who would have opposed this from the very beginning. I do have to agree with everyone's comments thus far, and I just wanted to say that the idea of how expensive it is to further investigate this, when a lot of points have clearly been made that it just is going down to Sharp Park. It doesn't go all the way to, it only goes to Sharp Park where it goes back to a single lane. So it just seems like we're spending a lot of money to just kick the problem down maybe another quarter mile down the road. Let's see. Obviously, as a concerned resident and of Skyline Boulevard, looking out my front kitchen window to 4 lanes of traffic that would only increase over the years just doesn't seem like any sort of a real way that I would like to continue to be a resident of such. And it just seems like the money could go towards much better things for our community than investigating something that doesn't seem like it's really going to do much of any type of solution. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Lisa Colombo.
Hello. I'm in opposition to the widening. We clearly have traffic and transportation issues in the Bay Area, but widening Skyline is not going to solve this problem. It'll, in fact, compound it by encouraging more cars on the road, which has been a point that's been made a few times. I think we should be spending, time and resources towards a solution that will fix the underlying traffic problems, and just widening Skyline is not going to do that, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria Bishop.
Hi. So I haven't lived in San Bruno for a long time, but I used to live in the Pacific Heights neighborhood. And coming from a place actually in the East Bay and Alameda where I was able to walk around safely, I did notice that that was a huge change for me. And I, in fact, was almost scared to walk to the bus stop and cross Skyline Boulevard. So I do think it's a terrible idea just for safety. I do agree with a lot of the other points that other people made in terms of the environmental aspect and the cases where the traffic has not improved even after a widening. But for me personally, I think it's just a hazard for people walking and biking and just basically living, and especially the people that live right there, which I actually didn't even realize that they were that close until I went and actually saw where it was. So yeah, just please do not move on to the next stage, and please opt to protect our citizens instead. Thanks.
Thank you. Adam Cazette.
I would like to urge the council not to move forward with the next phase of the Highway 35 widening project. The biggest problem is that adding capacity to highways is almost never effective at reducing congestion for long. Widenings like this one actually draw more traffic to the road, increasing vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. Even Caltrans now acknowledges this, and this is one of the main reasons that the local chapter of the Sierra Club is opposed to this project. The widening is also pretty expensive. It is expected to cost at least $35 million, and San Bruno would be required to come up with a minimum 10% match of $3.5 million. Pacifica recently had to make a similar decision whether to widen Highway 1. Their city council ultimately rejected the widening, but persuaded the Transportation Authority to let them use their funding to study alternatives to widening. I hope we can follow Pacifica's example. Thank you.
Malcolm Robinson.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Malcolm Robinson. I live on Merced Drive, and I've lived in San Bruno for nearly 30 years. The last 21 up on Portola Highlands, and I spent 15 years of those 21 years commuting to Silicon Valley to work. And I usually ride a motorcycle, so that transportation has not been an issue. But sometimes drive a car, and when you come back home on Skyline, it's 2 lanes. You have to wait a little bit, but there's usually deer there. It's a really scenic spot. It's actually called a byway in California. So there's eucalyptus trees, there's water to look at, there's deer. It's a soothing effect, and I think people should be thinking of that instead of, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here for 2 minutes, right? I would urge you to vote no on the widening of San Bruno Avenue. Check that, Skyline Avenue. I'm a little nervous. It's really not for San Bruno residents, right? It's just a few minutes wait extra for
not even 2 hours. You gave it like 10 hours a week. Well, it's really not that long where traffic is a little backed up. It's about an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening. If you want to improve traffic in San Bruno, do something about Church of the Highlands, right? It's more for Coast Side or Daly City. It's kind of a secret way for those of us who live in Portola Highlands to go up and down the peninsula on Skyline and 280 and then drop down to where we want to go and stay away from the congestion that has been created along El Camino Real and most of the cities on the peninsula. Widening Skyline will induce demand. It will bring traffic off the congested 280 up here on the hill, and we really don't need it. If you want to do something with this money, improve the Skyline Boulevard that we have now. At the corner of San Bruno Avenue and Skyline, the limit line is in the wrong place. It needs to be 10 feet further towards the traffic lanes. So many times when I'm coming north on Skyline, people just pull out in front of me because the trees and brush are overgrown. They can't see cars coming except at night when you see headlights. So you're driving along at 50 miles an hour, and all of a sudden somebody cuts in front of you because they've been shopping at Lenardi's. It's really an unsafe road as it is. It needs to be repaved. The road is crumbling. There's gravel in all the intersections. And as a motorcyclist, I find it very dangerous to commute around Skyline as it is. We could also use a street sweeper up there on Skyline. So if you want to do this money to widen California's 35, I highly recommend that you do where it joins 92, crawling up over the hill to Half Moon Bay. So it's just, I'd say maybe 5, 6, 7 hours a week you have issues of congestion today with our bit of Skyline, but it's all weekend going over to Half Moon Bay and as well as commute times. So that's part of 35 that definitely needs widening. But our little bit of countryside that we have up here in San Bruno, I think it's fine the way it is, and I would urge you to vote no.
Gerben?
Hi, I'm a recent citizen of San Bruno. I'm very happy to live here. I want to tell a story of a little discussion I had with my wife. My wife works in San Francisco, and she's taking the BART. She's now very happy that her commute is much less than when we lived in Palo Alto. And one of the things that we were thinking was that it would be beautiful for her to have an electric bike and just bike to work, but the roads are so unsafe coming from Crestmore to the BART station that I don't want her to bike that way. This is just one family, one person who's now deciding to use the car instead of the bike. And if you want to reduce congestion, taking cars off the road seems to be the most effective, and this is a clear way to improve traffic in San Bruno. Thank you.
Andy?
Honorable Mayor and Councils, thank you for hearing me out. If you guys don't know who I am, I'm one of the rabble-rousers from Open the SF Watershed. So we like to stick it to the PUC, and if Mayor, I told you this before, we are one of the original San Francisco colonies here in San Bruno. I'm also the amateur historian. So first of all, I am a guardian of the San Andreas Trail as well as the Sawyer Camp Trail, as well as all the trails we're not allowed to traverse inside the watershed that date back to the 1860s, as well as coastside trails, which I look at as one system. In other words, I, by default, have to come out against this proposal because you will reduce the quality of the experience on the San Andreas Trail, which connects to the Sawyer Camp Trail, which is the most popular linear park in San Mateo County. So that said, I want to give a little historical reference on what I see. So in say the late 1700s, early 1800s, we had the El Camino going through San Bruno, which went to LA, united the mission system. And then in 1926, they were trying to make a true skyline with the Spring Valley Water Company. This is San Francisco and San Mateo County, that would run up Sweeney Ridge and connect to where 92 meets at the Skyline Cemetery. That was the original route for Skyline. that was opposed by the water company by 1929. Skyline was routed a lower route to the east of the lakes, where we have it now, and joins 280, goes through Millbrae, and would pop out, actually would go over the Crystal Springs Dam, which was built in the 1880s and survived both major earthquakes. So after that, we got the Bayshore Freeway, okay? And then in the late 50s and early 60s, Mayor Fassler in Pacifica was pissed off because all the people going to Pacifica, and pushed very hard for the 380 freeway to go over Skyline, to cross over Skyline, over Sweeney Ridge, and cut through the Crestmore Canyon, which is a place I take my kids all the time, and sometimes one time with Marty's kids. So then, of course, we had 280 cutting our city, as well as 380, which stopped at the canyon, which is why it's a big mess now. But something that Jeffrey Tong and guys like us who are concerned about trail connectivity and pedestrian connectivity look at as a future opportunity to connect our city, which has been divided by so many people moving through our area to go eat dinner elsewhere. I hate to put on a NIMBY hat, but I got to do it. By the way, I've been in hearings in San Francisco where members from the Sierra Club have came to speak against me because apparently hikers on the ridgelines ruin water quality. Sometimes people say, or maybe something you might have heard before, a consultant is somebody you pay a lot of money to tell you what your watch says. And look at this road, it slopes into the lake. So common sense would tell me that if you're really worried about water quality, widening this road will do a lot more than 1,000 years of nature-loving hikers on the ridgelines.
Okay, going to have to wrap it up pretty quick, Andy.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Kalista? She was just, okay. Marco?
Marco, 2nd Avenue. I wanted to kind of co-sign and echo a lot of the previous comments. As a citizen and member of San Bruno, I'm opposed to widening Skyline Boulevard, but I'm trying to walk a fine line, and I'm also trying to appreciate the decision in front of you. I was one of the votes on traffic safety and parking. We voted 4-0 to pursue the study, but we voted to pursue the study because we had a lot of doubts, and I really apologize to my co-members of traffic safety and parking if I speak out of line. So I'm trying to really address this as a member of the community and a member of the traffic safety and parking. We voted 4-0 to pursue the study because we had a lot of the same reservations that are being shared tonight, in particular as was shared by the city and shared by Councilmember Ibarra about pedestrian and bicycle kind of considerations in the study. So I wanted to keep my comments brief. I'm opposed to it as a community member, but really to kind of add the context in that we had a lot of questions. We weren't sure how to pursue it. We wanted to pursue the study to really get some answers to those questions. So speaking just for myself, and I really want to underscore that in respect to my fellow committee members, we had more questions than answers, and we wanted to get some verification of those questions before we pursued before we recommended a decision. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is Kalista back yet? No. Laura?
Laura Davis, 516 Hawthorne. So born and raised in San Bruno, I've been traveling Skyline 35 and 280 for years. Probably in the last 10 years, a lot more often. I use either that exit off of 280, San Bruno Avenue, or use the 35. And I honestly can tell you that it hasn't changed in the last 10 years. It is always peak during the peak hours, and it always is quiet during the quiet hours. And honestly, making any changes to that, it really is a waste of city money. It's not a lot of hours that you really see a peak backup. And I think like some of the residents talked about tonight, it actually is a very beautiful scenic area. And as you feed into that area off of 280, you come really into San Bruno as well as Pacifica as well as Daly City. And most of those streets off of 35 also drop into just a 2-lane road. So we widen it to leave a few miles or a mile of a 4-lane road, and then we're back to the 2-lane highway. I think money not well spent. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess Kalista's not here, so that's all I have. Anybody else? Michael?
Hi, Michael Salazar, Reed Avenue.
I just wanted to add a couple of thoughts. Philosophically, I think that as a city, we've decided that we would concentrate any future growth within the transit corridors and take advantage of mass transit there. So I think any projects that would promote more driving, accommodate more drivers on the road, would go counter to that philosophy. I also noticed in the staff report it mentioned that the funding source was really intended to promote shuttles and bicycle and pedestrian type projects. So even though this idea was born back in the 80s when I think we still had more of a automobile mentality, I think that's really changed, and that philosophy is different now. And this project really goes counter to the spirit of why the voters approved that funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right. What's your pleasure?
I'm going to jump right in.
Go ahead.
As a member of the subcommittee and also a member of the Transit Authority, and been on this council for over 20 years, and it's always been about traffic. We've had issues with traffic, public transportation, and just like the last speaker said, we've taken care of our public transportation, which has been BART, and Caltrain, and safety issues along with that. I was torn on this because, one, I'm not really sure how it got placed in. It was paired with improvements to 380, which I think maybe a lot of people on the peninsula think that 380 needs to be a little altered so that it doesn't back up during that peak afternoon hour. But I did state that we were concerned about the bicycle pedestrian, and also it's 10 years on the CCAG BPAC. These are the type of projects that are prime for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Forget about the cars, because we've got the San Andreas Trail, and we've got a neighborhood within a mile of that intersection, and there's no connection. So the decision at the subcommittee level was that, we understand what you're saying about traffic and how it induces traffic, but I was torn that maybe we need to stay with the study so that we could stay, so that we can really push for this bicycle and pedestrian component. But I think we can do it without it. And so I'm going to stay with what I decided on at the subcommittee level, and probably to go even further, because being on the TA, there are so many other projects and so many other millions and millions of dollars of which you pay into Measure A that need to make your life a little better. And one of them is possibly this city taking advantage of a shuttle program, which ironically needs to be in place for those residents that are on the western side of our community. They need to get down to our improved mass transit. So that's the way I'm going to stand, and I'm going to leave it up to staff of how they want to encourage it or how they want to report it to the TA. But I'm going to say save the extra $500,000 and let's look at other improvements that have been talked about Skyline Boulevard.
Irene?
I have a couple questions first. Is this yours? Or is this staff?
Yeah, I meant to say that I did a little research and from the TA, and they had the Measure A Highway Capital Improvement Program of 2016 to 25. So there was a summary of costs of projects, and this project came in at $66 million. So I saw the breakdown with the various options, but at least the TA is looking at this as a $66 million, and then there's a footnote saying that goes up 2.5% every year. So, and then you're correct in saying that if the city really wanted to move forward with this, it would be a 10% matching fund, and I would say that based on these estimates, don't be surprised if it got up to about $80 million. I'm sorry.
Well, you answered my question, so I've traveled Skyline Boulevard repeatedly this last couple of weeks, and I guess the difficulty is weeding through some of the conceptions that people have voiced. It's a 2-lane, it's a 4-lane, it's a 2-lane, it's a 4-lane, and from, I forget where now, but from, yes, but from Skyline, from College to Sneath, it's 4 lanes. So in San Bruno, for a number of, I don't know, I think it's a mile, it is 4 lanes. So the flavor of what I've heard tonight is, oh my God, it's a 1 lane, we're going to make it 4 lanes, and it's going to be horrible, and life is going to end as we know it. So I think that's an exaggeration. Well, that's, we each had our opinion about it. I think it's an exaggeration in some ways. Yes, things would change as far as how it would be widening. Let me cut. I'm sorry. I'm kind of wandering around on this. We don't know. We say things. I mean, there's certain things in here that we don't know about. That's why we do studies. I would like us to concentrate on the alternative that has an improvement of 4 lanes at the approach and departure of San Bruno Avenue with signal improvements at Sneath Lane. To me, that seems to help out with the congestion without destroying the eucalyptus trees, without doing a lot of other things, but it would improve this pedestrian safety, especially at Sneath Lane. And somebody was commenting how they had a problem with crossing the street and how they felt it was unsafe. It can be very frightening sometimes. So we don't know. That's the point of a study. Jimmy, how specific could we get on this study? Could we say we only want one alternative, or do we have to look at all the alternatives?
We will be looking at all the alternatives.
So it's either all or nothing.
Yes.
Okay. Let me hold that for a little bit. Thank you.
Marty?
So I went to the TSPC meeting, and when it was discussed there and the vote, I've met with a number of residents the last weekend and kind of put myself in their shoes. But what I'm feeling is this doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't take everybody all the way to 280 where they need to go, right? If you can help me confirm that it goes to 4 lanes and then it 2 north, 2 south on 35, and then you try to get on to 280, and it goes back to 1 lane. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's just ridiculous. This isn't a solution. We're just pushing the problem further south. So that's number 1. Then we get to the point where the costs. I mean, if people have been paying attention, and I hope more people start coming to these meetings as we talk about how we're going to make our streets better, how we're going to make everything in San Bruno better. We don't have the money to maintain our streets. And if we're going to have to pay 10% in today's dollars at $8 million, there's no way. So I'm going to vote no for this. It's in our first paragraph, and I'm not on any of these other subcommittees of knowing, but why can't we spend the money, as it says here, on the community shuttle? I know one of the first things I tried to do when I got on this council was pushing for it, but, we need it. We need a shuttle. Let's improve things for us, because who's really driving this? You know, I don't think there's too many San Brunans that are driving and they're going to benefit from this. We're making it easier for other people to drive through our town. Let's spend the money on our shuttle, on our pedestrian projects, on our bicycle projects. So I'm voting no on this, and I thank you all for attending. Sorry. One more thing, I'm sorry, really sorry. I would like to see a study to go into how we can get a pedestrian bridge combined with a bicycle path over 35 into where people want to take a bike and ride that trail. I've done it a few times, but it is something that I'd rather spend the money looking at that, as well as for the shuttle and other projects.
Rico?
This is a receive a report and provide direction, so there's not a vote on this item, but there is direction staff is seeking from us. It's gone to the TSPC, it's gone to BPAC, and it's gone to the Infrastructure Subcommittee. So there's been a lot of opportunity and for discussion. I think I've heard from a few folks, aside from one was the trees. I heard from a lot of folks about the trees, and I must say, as I've gone on Bryant and Skyline, there are folks that I've also expressed that same concern if they come down about the noise, about the element, and the freeway kind of being in their backyard. But another item I've heard about is about the money. So if the $850,000, I believe you stated, is for the reports, if that's not spent here, it's not as if we have that money, we can go do something with it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So it's not as if there's this money in this pot somewhere. I just don't want everybody to say, okay, so that means start fixing the roads. I just want that to be kind of clear. One thing, Will, you brought up, so thank you for coming, was, really when you get off, it is a one lane, okay? Then it opens up and then it comes back once we get into Pacifica. So it's really a short stretch of road for potentially in this first go-around for us to get data and information, which is always helpful because you want to know what you're planning for the future and the reality of it. And that's the $850,000 that is not from us. However, if the project was suggested to go forward, we'll just say $35 million, and what that would take for our contribution. For the short stretch of road, which is affected from 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, and I'm sure if you're on it, nobody likes traffic. I take 101 to and from work, and let me tell you, that's not even getting fun at various parts of the day. So I don't know that that will be the answer. I'm with the Vice Mayor on the subcommittee on the infrastructure, and so my direction to staff will be not to proceed.
Okay. So just for the record, you should know today that we received a number, and I believe went all to the council, of support letters through the city clerk that were mailed to her today. So it's maybe they're watching ball games tonight or something, but we did receive a number of support letters. I just think I think it's worth looking at, and you never know what's going to come out of this with a little more study. There could be something that could really benefit everybody, not just the people that have to sit up there, because they do, but perhaps the bicycle people, perhaps the walkers. There's lots of things that could eventually come out of future study that doesn't cost the city any more money. I think it's worthwhile, and I'm for sending it back to staff and say, let's take a closer look, because I think there's alternatives now. There could be more with a little more study that could benefit everybody that we haven't even touched on this evening. So I'm for sending it back and letting it go through this process. That's my feeling. So no. Anybody else? Irene?
Well, I am too. I don't know. We've said a lot of things, and we can imagine a lot of things happening, but we don't know. And there are some alternatives that are listed here that I think could be beneficial. And to do the study gives us information. It's not costing us anything. It doesn't commit us to anything. It just gives us information. So I don't think we're going to get this one out there, Jim.
Okay.
For the benefit of the public, Jimmy, can you explain again what this next step would be if we were to move forward?
It's the project initiation development, so they will look at all the alternatives, because this is basically a preliminary planning study, so it was like a very, high-level study that they came up with various different alternatives for the improvements, but they'll dig down a little bit deeper on some of these alternatives and try to figure out what their impacts are related to if the project ever moves forward towards the construction phase. So they will look at the environmental impacts for these alternatives.
Would we get more information as to how it would be improved, instead of just saying it would be widening, where it would be widening, to what extent, it would go on the northbound and southbound, what trees would be affected?
Correct, yes.
How tall of retaining walls we'd be looking at?
Correct.
Okay. Marty, you're not in favor of going forward? Rico, you're not?
Not at this time.
Irene, you are?
Yes.
Ken?
I'm going to stick to what I said and say, do not move forward.
Okay, I'm in favor of it, so I guess the majority of the council does not want to move forward. Okay, thank you. Item 10B is receive a report and provide direction regarding traffic safety.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, this is not, we have representation on our BPAC in the county level. We do have interest in the shuttle program. The TA does fund, and CCAG does fund projects that could improve the circulation in alternate ways in that area. And so if we wanted to really pursue a pedestrian and bicycle connection between San Andreas Trail and Portola Highlands, staff can look at that, the BPAC can look at that and move forward with that. If we want to look at getting cars off the roads and getting them to public transportation, we need to look at shuttles to get people down to, Caltrain and BART.
Okay, thank you. Item 10B is receive a report and provide direction regarding traffic safety improvements on Susan Drive.
Good evening again. We're here tonight to provide information on the results of the comprehensive traffic study for Susan Drive and to obtain direction again from the council on the alternative to proceed with the design. Susan Drive is located west of Skyline Boulevard and is approximately 3/4 of a mile in length and parallels Skyline Boulevard from Sharp Park Road to College Drive. The road is classified as a local residential, has a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour, and has a single lane in the northbound and southbound directions. Parking is allowed only on the west side of Susan Drive. Throughout the years, residents...
Excuse me, could we just have a little quiet so we can finish this report? Thank you.
Throughout the years, residents living along Susan Drive expressed concerns related to the traffic speeds. The city evaluated the speed and volume of traffic along the corridor and presented the recommendations to the city's TSPC committee. As a result, traffic calming measures were installed by installation of additional speed limit signs, edge line markings, and additional traffic enforcements were implemented. Several years ago, there was an accident at the intersection of Susan Drive and Jeffrey, where a motorcyclist suffered severe injuries. And although traffic calming measures were already made, the city evaluated whether additional enhancements could be implemented to address recent concerns related to sight distance at intersections along Susan Drive. The city hired a traffic engineering firm, TJKM, to conduct a comprehensive study and develop potential enhancements to improve sight distance, reduce vehicle speeds, and enhance safety for all modes of traffic. The study evaluated all five intersections along Susan Drive, starting at Susan and Evergreen Ridge Apartments driveway and all the way to Susan Drive and Fasman. The data that was collected by TJCAM to perform the evaluation included historical crash information, vehicle speed and volume, peak hour pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular turning movements, and on-street parking supply and occupancy. And field visits were also conducted by TJKM. And based on their evaluation, they concluded that there were limited sight distance from the intersections of Susan and Summit and all the way to Susan and Fasman due to parked cars, buildings, and plantings, and the geometry of the land and roadway. They also noted full collisions through the research, but there were no significant patterns in their crash data. Their data also indicated that the drivers occasionally drive above the speed limit of 25 miles per hour. For the parking survey, they noticed that on-street parking is heavily used near and closest to the apartments in the northern part of the neighborhood. Stop signs evaluations were also conducted. They concluded that installation of stop signs on the minor streets can be installed at the intersections, but however, installation of all the always stop signs were not met. Based on a review and collected data and evaluation, they determined 5 different improvement alternatives, which we'll go over today. So the first alternative is to keep the existing conditions as is and do nothing. This alternative doesn't improve sight distance issues and reduce vehicle speeds, which remains the same. The amount of parking spaces remain the same as well. The second alternative improves the intersection by installing striped bulb outs with raised pavement markers to help reduce vehicle speeds. The stop signs at the minor streets and new centerline striping will be installed at all intersections. Pavement speed legends will also be installed along Susan Drive to educate drivers of the speed limit. Installation of the striped bulb out will require removal of some parking spaces. And since the cars will be stopping at the intersection existing crosswalk location, this alternative doesn't provide a full recommended intersection sight distance. The third alternative, which is the alternative identified by TSBC as the preferred alternative, is similar to what you saw earlier, alternative number 2. However, instead of the striped bulb outs, where the recommendation is to install concrete bulb outs, this alternative also relocates the crosswalks closer to the intersection, which allows cars on a minor street to stop further into the intersection. The cars on a minor street will have better sight of the cars that are traveling along Susan Drive, and this alternative will meet this intersection sight distance, and some parking will be removed as well. The fourth alternative includes additional enhancement at the intersections, which this alternative is very similar to alternative number 3 with the concrete bulb outs, but it also includes what is called a raised intersection. This alternative, the raised intersection, what it does is it reduces vehicle speeds at these intersections by slowing them down because it kind of acts like a little speed hump there. The last alternative is alternative number 5. This includes the stop signs at the minor streets and new centerline striping at all these minor streets as well as pavement legends for the speeds and so forth. But however, this alternative includes the installation of only red curbs, and that will remove substantially a lot of parking spaces along Susan Drive. So just the slide. Yes. The slide that shows all the summary of the alternatives and type of improvements and estimated costs. This slide is reformatted a little bit, different from the one that you received in the staff report. The costs ranged from $0 for doing nothing to all the way to about $590,000. The preferred alternative is approximately $432,000. The loss of parking spaces are shown as well. As you can see, alternative number 5, which is to install red curbs, it will remove about 30 parking spaces. For the alternative number 3, which is a preferred alternative, it will remove about 14 spaces. These alternatives were discussed at the TSBC meeting and where some of the residents attended, and residents acknowledged that the need for these improvements. However, they were also concerned about the loss of parking spaces. And after discussing these issues with the residents, the alternative number 3 was recommended as the alternative to proceed. So we're seeking council's direction tonight in order for us to proceed. If we council collectively agrees with alternative number 3, the city staff will issue a request for proposal for design services. This concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Ken?
Through the chair. Jimmy, I'm curious on why there wasn't or why we don't do it now, why there wasn't an option to just red curb the corners. What I've seen over the years and what the residents along Susan and those cross streets have complained about is the parking on the corners. And for a few years now, that question has come up, and I believe even the police department weren't even sure if that's legal or not. or if that was a violation to park on a corner. They're not marked, there's no red curbing or anything. Is it illegal to, if you put in crosswalks, is it illegal to block a crosswalk at a corner? That's my question, and possibly the chief can answer that. I guess my next question is that if we select one of these alternatives, and of which, I guess on the staff report, it was alternate 3, the concrete bulb outs?
Yes.
If we were to select that at, $430,000, how would we pay for that?
Great questions.
And so, I mean, is that another option, in the interim of whether we just paint the corners and see how it affects the parking? I mean, you're probably going to lose the same, 12 or 14 parking spaces. Even if you were to paint the bulb outs, there'd be an enforcement issue also. But if you were to paint those corners, I'd be interested to see what staff thinks about that.
Right, painting just the corners alone, it's not going to help with the sight distance because there's sight triangles that needs to be met in order for the cars to be able to see as they're approaching out into the street. So we would have to paint a lot more red curbs in order to remove parking spaces to allow for the cars from the minor street to be able to see the oncoming cars along Susan Drive.
So that's the reason for the bulb.
That's correct. So that the bulb out will allow us to move the cars forward towards the intersection so that the cars will be able to see the oncoming vehicles.
Marty?
I guess I understand that we have a consultant on board that's going to be looking at painting red curbs and doing those type of things to make some intersections, most intersections, safer. In my opinion, we have too many already that don't have any red curb, and I would really like to see us, can't wait till we start painting curbs red. People just park wherever they can, and it creates a dangerous situation. It's dangerous up there. I went to the TSPC meeting. I see you guys spent a lot of effort into it. It's just a lot of money, $430,000. So I work in Fremont. I would like to encourage staff to either go on Google Maps or I can send it to you. But there's this intersection or this three-way street, actually a T intersection, kind of like our situation, where they use different colored paving and then like the delineators. So the point is, it's a lot cheaper to do that than put curb, and you can still get the same effect. And if staff could investigate that, I think it's a lot better option than spending that amount of money. But I think what I want to stress to staff is we need to paint more red curb. There's just too many areas in San Bruno where you're pulling out because there's cars pulled up right up in the intersection, and you have to take a chance with your life as you're pulling out. Like you have to go. So I don't want to see that. And I'm a big advocate of parking because parking is really important, but I don't want to see anybody get hurt. And that was one of the things that was contributing to the problem up there, was people blocking and then having to have our police officers kind of go out and deal with that all the time. But I think most people understand when it's red, you don't park there. So
it's like the red stop sign.
Well, most people. I mean, when you're at a stop sign, you're going, right? You check and boom, California stop and you're running. But when you're parking your car on a corner and it's red, you're asking for a ticket. So I could send this forward to you. I'm interested in doing something. Just that I would rather have you look at that and get back to us and see what you come up with on that.
Sure, we can take a look at that, and one of the alternative on here is to remove parking spaces, and that's the cheapest alternative, just go out and paint red curbs, but the staff was trying to balance the number of parking
Right.
spaces being removed, because that's the concern that came from the residents.
Right, so I'm not saying paint it all red, I understand it, as much as you do, you would paint the part where you're not supposed to park, it's just being like, you know, that exclamation point, like, you're gonna get a ticket by it being red along the curb return, right, as we're there, but this other design has a different way of doing it at a substantial cost savings.
Jimmy, for line of sight, if you just painted the red curbs, how far down on either side do you really have to go to open up that line of sight?
Michael, do you know? It's about, if we don't do the bulb outs, it's going to be about 3 to 4 cars lengths, possibly a little more on, either side of the intersection.
And that eliminates about how many spaces
So
in that whole?
the total loss at all the intersections is the total that's shown for alternative 5, so that's 30 parking spaces. Yes.
Okay.
And we lose 14 for the concrete bulb outs.
Mhm. Okay. Sounds like it would be another busy council meeting if we approve that. I mean, 30 there. But something has to be done, so. Rico?
I was just going to say, yes, something does have to be done. We know that. We've discussed this for obvious reasons why we need to address it. Also, I received a letter in the mail from Mr. Bowler, also on Susan, very concerned about the speeding. So about the traffic calming, and that is something that I hear up there, but Mr. Bowler's, I think, been up there maybe 56 years, and probably has can certainly tell me the history of how it's increased. So that's also another concern, aside from site visibility, but also the speeding.
Okay. Irene?
Well, I would like us to look at the painted bulb outs with the addition of what did you call them, Marty?
They're like delineators.
Yeah, I've seen those. I don't see why those wouldn't work, and it'd be a lot cheaper than $500,000 for concrete. So with that, you'd still lose the 14 parking spaces, but that's the way that goes. And you would still keep people away from the corner, but you wouldn't have to spend the $500,000, and hopefully that would do it. If it didn't do it, then we could keep on going and try the concrete. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the only drawback to the painted bulb outs is that the crosswalks does not get moved towards the intersection because it has to kind of stay where it is, and because there's no protection for the pedestrians to be walking where the painted bulb outs are, right? Because that's out in the street locations, and so with that, the intersection site distance wouldn't be met.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. In your picture, though, it shows. Yeah, could you show back on the drawing of alternative 2? So
it does move out the crosswalk, and it creates the same thing for a lot less money.
So doesn't this move out? It looks like it moves out the crosswalk in the picture. Right here. As opposed to here.
So they bring that out.
Yeah, except, but you can see how this is still behind the curb line. In order to get the improvement we want, that crosswalk would have to move so that part of it is beyond the curb line. And that's where we'd be a little concerned if it's not. Yeah, I'm sorry. So our concern is that where the crosswalk is currently, and if you look at the part that shows the road, it's actually maybe a little deceiving, but the crosswalk currently is back behind where the current existing curb line is, or it roughly would line up with that, the outer side of it. when we have the painted crosswalk, the painted island, we wouldn't move that crosswalk line out into that painted area, so it would still be at its current position. And when we go to the concrete version, because now we have a raised concrete extension of the corner, then, you know, we would feel comfortable that we can move that crosswalk and have it go up, out beyond where the existing curb line is. And what Councilman Medina just showed us with the delineators to take the place of the island, one of the pictures also shows that, yes, they put the crosswalk through the delineated island, but it's still behind where the existing curb line is. I won't say that I would be, as a traffic engineer, that I would be completely against possibly using that and moving the crosswalk further out. That might be something we would want to look at a little more carefully, but I also wouldn't say I could tell you right here and now I would be comfortable with doing that either.
I guess the bottom line is we want our pedestrians to be safe. We want to have the sight distance. We don't want to spend $500,000. So can you figure out something in between that does all those things and only does 14 parking spaces? That's my opinion. Okay.
I think you summarized that well.
Okay.
Okay. Rico, yes? Marty?
Yes. We're gonna at least paint the curb returns red. So sorry. But we can at least paint the curb returns red.
For now.
For now, yeah. I mean, we're doing something. You know, it's been like that forever, and finally getting red out there isn't going to cost too much.
So if I may, Mr. Mayor, through the chair, it's
Yes.
probably best to not design traffic control improvements at a city council meeting. Doing only part of the red curbing, which still leaves a condition which isn't corrected, actually could be worse than doing nothing at this point. So I would want to refer this, suggest referring it back to staff and back to their traffic consultant to get some expert opinion. I also do want to say that lots of cities do lots of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're all the right thing to do. It means that they might have tried something, and I happen to be aware of a case involving the city of Fremont where they put up all sorts of devices and traffic control signals and lights and pavement markings, and ultimately the city got sued because there was too much clutter. There was too much visual clutter, so nobody really knew what to do. So these are sort of balancing things that are best left to engineers and not designed at 9:30 at a city council meeting.
Yeah, it's getting late.
Ah, shucks.
So having
It's
said
fun.
that, do you have a pretty good feeling of where we would like to go with this?
Yes.
Can you bring something back to us that combines, all of these ideas, if you can?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item, see, we're getting wrapped up here. 10C, approve design amend capital improvement program budget to include $93,952 for the pedestrian warning systems project and adopt resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a construction contract with St. Francis Electric LLC for the pedestrian crosswalk enhancement project at Portola Elementary and Parkside Intermediate Schools in an amount not to exceed $137,690, approving a construction contingency of $20,654, and approving a total budget of $165,229.
Great. I'm up again here. This item is regards to the pedestrian crosswalk enhancement project to improve the safety for residents in our community. San Bruno Community Foundation was created by the City Council to invest, manage, and expend the use of $70 million in restitution funds identified, and they identified projects to use these restitution funds and to benefit the community. And one of the project was the pedestrian safety improvement project. And staff previously came to council on August 22nd to present this project and recommended the council to reject the one bid received from Tennyson Electric in the amount of $239,000, which is approximately 144% higher than the engineer's estimate of about $98,000. Staff also recommended the City Council to exercise the Public Contracts Code 20167 to allow the city with the flexibility in procuring the cost proposals for the project. The City Council voted unanimously and rejected the bid and approved the procuring a contractor pursuant to the Public Contracts Code. Since that meeting, staff repackaged the contracts document and solicited proposals for the project. And on September 20th, staff received 3 proposals, ranging in price from $137,000 to $264,000, in comparison to the previous bid price of $239,000. So the lowest proposal received was from St. Francis Electric in the amount of about $138,000. Comparison to previous bid, it was about $101,000 lower. The firm St. Francis Electric completed numerous projects similar to the one that we're awarding tonight for various agencies, and staff is recommending to award the project to them because they have the qualifications and experience to perform the work. This project will install a total of 3 pairs of flashing beacons at 2 school sites at Portola Elementary and Parkside Intermediate Schools. Staff recommends a construction budget that includes a 15% contingency and as well as 5% for inspection and project management. The construction will take approximately 30 days. We'll begin after execution contract, anticipated to be beginning around November. There'll just be some minor impacts such as noise, dust, rerouting of pedestrian traffic, and staff will be working with the contractor to minimize these impacts. We're asking the council to amend the CIP budget to include the new appropriation that the Community Foundation recently appropriated in June. They increased the allocation from $170,000 for this project to about $264,000. So that's pretty much it. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And Jimmy, you said that's 30 days to complete both projects?
That's correct, both sites.
Okay.
Yes.
Marty?
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you so much, and to the San Bruno Community Foundation for the funds.
So you're going to introduce the resolution?
Well, if we're ready to go. Nobody else? Anybody else?
Okay, go.
Thank you.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Councilmember Marty Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra.
Aye.
Mayor Rubing.
Aye. Adopt a resolution adopting a city debt management policy. Jim?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the multi-year water and wastewater rate program recognizes needed significant and costly capital improvements for upgrading and replacing infrastructure. The rate program and the City Council approved capital improvement program projects issuance of debt financing. Recent state legislation requires cities to adopt a debt management program, a debt management and disclosure policy, facilitating financial transparency and public accessibility to information regarding debt. The draft policy in front of you is a very general guideline and policy, and it has not been tailored specifically for the water and wastewater financing that was discussed tonight at the study session. 3 key provisions of the proposed policy include generally stating purposes of debt. It outlines the types of debt and debt structures to be considered, and then compliance and internal control procedures. The policy, again, in very general terms, states that prior to issuing debt, the city will consider all available funding sources, including cash reserves, current revenues, potential future revenues, grants, and all other financing sources legally available. It's, again, broadly states that expenditures of bond proceeds are only expected to fund major non-recurring expenses, including such things as project planning and design, construction or renovation of buildings, permanent structures, and infrastructure, land acquisition, equipment acquisition, financing costs, and any necessary debt service reserves. The refunding or refinancing of existing debt obligations is also provided for in the draft policy. The Policy goes on to state that the city will evaluate alternatives to secure the most cost-advantageous financing while limiting the city's risk exposure. There is a list of potential types of debt, 4 of which revenue bonds, certificates of participation, pension obligation bonds, and lease purchase agreements the city has used in the recent past. There are additional types of debt that are outlined that would be possibilities sometime in the future. The policy spells out the city's commitment to meet all legal compliance requirements. Reports will be filed on a timely basis or would be filed with the California Debt and Investment Advisory Commission, and periodic continuing disclosure requirements would be met. Again, the state legislation requires all cities to adopt this general type of debt management policy. The city attorney and bond counsel and the financial advisor have all reviewed the draft policy and are satisfied that it meets state's requirements. There are actually 2 resolutions in your agenda packet for approval of the policy. One is for city council action, and the other is for the San Bruno Public Financing Authority, which is the city council acting as the finance authority. So there are the 2 mirror copy resolutions for the 2 bodies to act on. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions that the council would have.
Any questions for Jim?
Yes.
Marty?
Very timely. For all you that missed our earlier meeting at 6, we're investigating issuing $39 million of debt to pay for our sewer and water over 30 years, potentially at around a 3.59% interest rate. So it's needed. My other question to you is, this debt could also be potentially added for providing funding for fiber expansion?
The policy?
Or the policy that would allow debt financing, fiber installation debt financing?
Again, this is a general policy that needs to be in place before any debt is issued, but this policy it anticipates in future years any number of financings that the city council would direct.
Okay, thank you.
And just to be clear, yes, we did have a study session, but this is a requirement that is now a law of the state of California that we must, as a city, have this in place.
It actually became effective at the beginning of this year, is correct.
So this is, yes, what Councilmember Marty Medina said is correct, but this aspect is different from what was discussed, which will be coming back on the 24th, just so we're clear. Okay.
Anyone else? Someone like to introduce the resolution?
I'll introduce.
Vice Mayor Ibarra?
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
Mayor Ruane?
Aye. Our final item under conduct of business is 10E, receive a report and provide direction to staff regarding recruitment of the new city clerk.
Through the chair, I mean, not to get out of line here, but there were 2 resolutions. Were we supposed to introduce both under 2 entities? That caught my ear, Jim. I was listening at this late hour.
Yeah, there's 2 resolutions.
We're the Public Funding Authority.
San Bruno Public Financing Authority, that's correct.
So I'll introduce that resolution.
Vice Mayor. Director Ibarra?
Aye.
Director Marty Medina?
Aye.
Director Rico Medina?
Aye.
Director O'Connell?
Aye.
Director Ruane?
Aye. Thank you, Ken. Okay. Okay, 10E, receive report and provide direction to staff regarding recruitment of the new city clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This item was before you at your last meeting, and at that time you directed or authorized the entry of a contract with an executive recruitment firm to assist the City Council in recruiting and appointing a city clerk to take the follow the elected city clerk following her term expiration and the transition to an appointive city clerk position effective December 12th of this year. You'll note that the staff report has a different date, December 5th. I recently learned that that was an error. The results of the election will be certified just prior to that date, and under the city's code, the change in elected officials, including the expiration of the term of the existing city clerk, occurs on the first Tuesday following the certification of the election results. So that date is December 12th. In any case, the City Council authorized a contract with Ralph Anderson Associates to conduct the recruitment in conjunction with the City Council, and staff has initiated work with Heather Rentschler, who is the representative of the Ralph Anderson firm with whom you will be working. I would note that the City Council determined on April 11th that the city clerk position would be appointed by the City Council, and at that time you approved a job description. Staff subsequently included funding in the fiscal year 17-18 budget that was approved by the City Council at the end of June, and then moved quickly to seek an executive recruitment firm that you authorized the contract with at the last meeting. The first step, as described to you at the last meeting, in the recruitment process, particularly when an agency or city uses an executive recruitment firm, is for the recruiter to sit down with the City Council or with the appointing body to discuss the desirable characteristics, including but going beyond the job qualifications or training and experience qualifications that are outlined in the job description. That discussion is a broad-based opportunity for the consultant to understand what the City Council will be looking for, both in terms of personal characteristics as well as direct job qualifications. In talking with the recruiter, she identified a interest to make sure that the City Council is mindful of the fact that at this point in time, the seated City Council will be initiating the recruitment, but the newly elected City Council that will take office on December 12th will actually, due to the duration of the recruitment assignment, be making the actual selection and appointment of the new city clerk. As such, I brainstormed with the consultant and came up with two options that are being presented to you tonight for your consideration with respect to this recruitment. The first being, in order to avoid any potential challenges that may result from that situation that I just identified. The two options that we've considered, and you may certainly have other ideas, but briefly, the City Council might decide to delay the start of the recruitment until the new City Council is seated, and that council has an opportunity then to meet with the recruiter. Alternatively, the City Council might want to consider appointment of a subcommittee of the two individuals on the current City Council who will be continuing in elective office for another, for the remainder of their existing term, and that those people might be tasked with meeting with the consultant to develop the job, or the candidate, the desirable candidate profile, and to get the recruitment kicked off. So I present to you those alternatives for your consideration or any other discussion that you may wish to have. The consultant is available to meet as soon as this week on Friday, should the City Council wish to proceed. Thank you.
Connie, you mentioned at the last time we discussed this that the existing city clerk, Carol Bonner, was willing to stay on because we would need somebody to carry on until that new city clerk is appointed. Have you had discussions with her about this?
I have not had additional recent discussion with Ms. Bonner, but that was her comment in a previous conversation.
Okay.
I can check with her again.
All right. Well, I'm not going to be on this new city council, but I'll just voice my opinion now. I think it's up to the new city council to do what they're going to do. Appointing a subcommittee of the two remaining known council members would be Mr. Medina and Ms. O'Connell, and I know they have two completely different views on the city clerk appointment and how that should be handled. So I think that might be counterproductive. I'd like to see the first option and just wait for the new council to take its seat and then work through this. Anyone else?
I'm just going to chime in and say that I don't need to make a decision. I don't need to make a decision on something that I won't be involved in, and so I would pass it on to the new council to make the appointment. I don't know. I don't have an opinion as far as how the subcommittee would work on this, but I will pass it off to the new council to make that decision.
Okay. Rico?
I could concur on the having the new council. You could have up to 3 new members, potentially. And obviously that clerk will serve at the new council's pleasure. But also, I believe that business goes on in this community. We can't just wait for an election until December and then the holidays, and then we're into January of 2018. I believe that there's 2 existing, Marty Medina and Councilmember Irene O'Connell, should meet and give guidance to the to the contractor who's going out and doing the recruitment and begin the process. And then the appointment can be made as the new council is sworn in and gets up to date, so that we don't, because I believe you said it could be up to 120 days, and if we wait until then, we're obviously going to be way past into the new year.
Marty?
I can go either way on this, really. I think it's letting the next council decide. That's fine. It's just a delay. I guess it really depends on how strongly Councilwoman Irene O'Connell feels about wanting to partake in that process. I mean, we have to select one. We already have the decision. It would get us further down the road. So I'm open.
Okay. Irene?
Let me get this clarified. We would meet and discuss the attributes we would be looking for a city clerk. So it wouldn't be, we would want someone experienced. I mean, I would think that any reasonable group of people would want at least basically the same things. And I am sure between, even though we did not agree on the process of selecting a city clerk, I would assume, and I would hope I am correct, that we would be looking for the similar attributes regardless of how that person is picked. So I'm happy with going ahead. So
Okay.
the final decision about who would go to the new council anyway, so.
Okay, so why don't we appoint Marty Medina and Irene O'Connell to that subcommittee to meet with the new recruiter.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, great. Board of Commissions, boards and committees, there aren't any this evening. Comments from council members, anyone?
Through the chair. Oh, you.
Ken?
I just want to make an announcement that as I'm an advisor at Cappuccino High School with the Leo Club, which is a youth group sponsored by the Lions Club, and they took it upon themselves to help out the homeless issue at the St. Bruno's Catholic Workers Hospitality program. And so they have a collection bin at the high school, and they're going to actively be collecting various items, in that collection bin, throughout the year. Obviously, there's times that that school will be closed, and we'd like to talk to staff about possibly relocating that bin at City Hall or some city facility while school is closed. But I will encourage people to probably get that on the website or something to look at some of these items. Catholic Workers Hospitality is at St. Bruno's. They've been there for a number of years, and they take care of some of the local homeless. They don't have a lot of beds, but they do take care of the homeless and serve meals and give them some needed goods. So I think it's advantageous that this youth group is taking a stand and doing something locally in their own community, and we should follow suit. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Number 11, I wanted to make sure.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that.
David Nigel, Chairman of the BPAC. First of all, I wanted to say we struggled with the skyline widening situation too. So I know what you all went through, and we had a hard time making our decision. But being a resident of Skyline Boulevard, I don't want those trees to go, so I was happy with the decision. This morning, 8 of us met at BART, Adam Cozzetti and Michael Cato, representing the city, and myself, and we met with the consultants for the BART gap study. And our biggest issue is, from bicycle and pedestrians in our committee, is safety. You've heard that over and over and over again. We've heard it as well. So we had a 2.5-hour tour around BART and around Tanforan, looking at the gaps, which there are significant ones, and trying to look at how we can make those areas safer. And we had engineers and city planners and traffic specialists with us on that. And it was really a very successful walk. And our director, our wonderful director, Dave Walter Ring, will get the report from Victoria Eisen, who is the principal of the company that's helping us with that plan. And so I just wanted you to know that our committee is a hardworking, as you know, and successful committee. And we're very proud of the work we've done. But I also want to compliment staff. They've been such a good support for us. And we'll keep you posted as what goes on after that report. So we're trying to get more people from the hills and the lower part to use BART and feel safe doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Do you have something, Marty?
Two quick things. This weekend, the Cappuccino marching band got first place in San Jose at Fiesta del Mar Band in San Jose. For the marching band, they got first place. Third place in the Mace Drum Major, Nevin Jayanti. Second place in the concert band, and third place in the jazz band. And you can see them, I believe, Thursday night, 7 o'clock, Cappuccino. Get your tickets early. The music program in San Bruno is thriving. So make sure you guys can make that.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Let's see. I do have something I'd like staff to bring back. We're putting in all new restrooms in City Park. They're going to be brand new, and we've done some paving on the paths over the last number of months, but we need desperately some new trash cans and recycling containers, and I'd like to see what we can do, what staff can do to bring back some suggestions and a cost for us to get those expedited so that they can be part of this new renovation that we're taking on. Also, one other thing, I know we talked about and schedules for lots of parking repaving and improvements, but I was behind West Coast today after lunch, and if we don't get something done back there as far as expediting some pavement, we're going to be into some kind of lawsuit here pretty soon, especially with the winter coming. There are not some loose pavement, there's some holes back there, and it's really, really bad. So whatever we can do to expedite that particular situation, I would appreciate it. So staff could come back with that. Connie, do we need this closed session this evening, or because it's 10 o'clock now? Can we do without it this evening, or?
So the assistant city manager is saying it will be very short.
Okay, it'll be very short. We'll go into closed session right after we finish with adjournment, but I do have a couple of things before we adjourn. First of all, keep in your thoughts and prayers all the people in Sonoma County, Napa, up there. I just heard early this evening the winds are up again, and it's spread to Oakmont, and it's growing desperately. So we know how fire disaster can affect a community, and it's a horrible situation up there. How they're going to recover, I don't know. So I know we've sent some strike teams and some police officers up there, and we'll continue through that through next week. So keep them in your thoughts and prayers. We'll close the city council meeting this evening in memory of three very important people, each of them an icon in San Bruno. First of all, Carolyn Livingood, a resident of San Mateo County for nearly 70 years and San Bruno for the last several decades, passed away last Tuesday after a valiant fight against cancer. Many throughout San Mateo County will remember Carolyn for her work as a news correspondent for the San Mateo Times, where her column brought a hometown flavor to the regional newspaper. Carolyn was a vigorous advocate and a tireless contributor to an ever better and more beautiful San Bruno. She was heavily involved in organizations and activities in support of our country's veterans, and she actually accomplished getting the federal government's attention to make needed improvements to Golden Gate National Cemetery that make it truly a jewel in our community. Carolyn was a member of several city committees, including the Beautification Task Force, Crime Prevention Committee, and the Culture and Arts Commission. She was president of the Avenue of Flags Committee at the cemetery. She was honored as Patriot of the Year 2016 and was inducted into the San Mateo County Women's Hall of Fame. Here in San Bruno, her good works and many contributions were recognized with declaration of Carolyn Livingood Day in 2002. The second person is San Bruno longtime city council member Chris Pallas, who passed away last week. Chris was a resident of San Bruno and San Mateo County for nearly 60 years. Chris served on the San Bruno Park School Board and trustees for 7 years before being elected to the San Bruno City Council, where he served for 25 years. Chris is proud of his service in the U.S. Army Air Force during World War II and was a past commander of American Legion Post 409 in San Bruno. Chris is very proud and passionate about the city's utility services and was a strong advocate for the city's water production through its 5 production wells. Chris delighted in his role in initiating the Project Pride Committee and the fun Easter egg and Halloween parades he helped plan every year for our children. As a city council member, he was also a dedicated parade events, a dedicated advocate for the community's seniors, and was most proud of his efforts to assure development of the San Bruno Senior Center. In more recent years, Chris maintained his active affiliation with the Senior Center and its programs through his participation in the American Association of Retired Persons. And just today, we lost a dear friend of mine and San Bruno, Sister Ida Patricia Cleary. She entered the Presentation Sisters of Thurles in Thurles County, Tipperary, Ireland in 1942, and she attended Carrisford Teaching College in Dublin, Ireland, and Lone Mountain College here in San Francisco. She taught grade school in Thurles County, Tipperary, and served as principal at Presentation School, Hospital County, Limerick, Ireland. Then in 1970, Sister Ida was missioned to teach at St. Robert's Catholic School. That's 47 years ago, San Bruno. In the ensuing years, she served as Parish Director of Religious Education and Pastoral Associate to the Sick and Homebound, St. Vincent de Paul Society and Legion of Mary, and she also served as Director of Presentation Associates in San Bruno. Sister Ida will be fondly remembered for her infectious smile and friendly and welcoming personality. She will also be remembered for her musical and storytelling talents. And as a student in the Spanish classes at the San Bruno Senior Center, she will be sorely missed. She was really a saint. So I would like to close with a moment of silence in memory of these three wonderful individuals. Thank you. Now we will go into closed session.